Hello. Are you awake? Good. If you're not awake, I was gonna wake you up because I'm bored. And I made you a coffee. And so the way this works is that I can't drink my coffee without you drinking yours. So I was hoping you'd be up because guess who has the second one? Me. Cheers to first thing in the morning. Oh. Yeah, just slowly waking up. But how did you sleep? Decent. Wait, check this out. Oh yeah. Sounds start early. Anyway, how did you sleep? Very nice. It was rainy, and that helped. It looks like it's probably gonna keep raining today. It's supposed to be a high chance. Yeah. I dreamt about middle school. And I thought, no, please, no. I don't want to dream about middle school. I was thinking though, when I woke up, I think I know why I dreamt about it actually, because the other day I went to the Tate Modern and I saw, this is gonna sound maybe conceited, I saw photographs from this guy, Joseph Kudelka. Do you know him? I think he's Czech. Anyway, he's still alive. He still makes work, but he made work throughout his life as an exile. So I think he's from the Czech Republic, something like that. He was kind of nomadic and didn't have a home for a bit and slept outside, and he took photographs from this perspective of being an exile, and they're super amazing. I have the book somewhere. I bought the book, but I was thinking about middle school when I saw it, and I think what it is that it's about being an exile. Like, there's something about that where he's kind of wandering and he's taking photographs, and that sense of when you're in exile, you're kind of lost. And I really like that word, exile, because it implies that there is a kind of standard in the traditional sense. It's like a nation or a state that says that things are one way, right? So you've got some type of religious doctrine, you've got some type of political agenda, some type of national identity. And if you don't fit in, you can be exiled. Or if you're a threat to the state, you're exiled. And we see this all the time in history. But there's something about that mechanism of identity where you have to go. And when you go, you're cut off traditionally from like the food and the culture that you are from. And it becomes internalized, and you take it with you into something new that may or may not feel like home. And sometimes it doesn't. You feel permanently displaced from the context. But I was thinking about how there's these macro concepts of exile, like political exile, cultural exile, but then there's also individual, like very small level exiles. And I think what happened to me in middle school, I used to think that I was really different and that I was exiled from, like I was gay, I was nerdy, and I used to think that I was exiled from a culture because I didn't fit in, but actually I self-exiled. And that's an interesting idea, self-exile. Anyway, I think that's why I had a dream about middle school. You know what I mean? Yeah, being in middle school is awkward because you're a teenager and it's so awkward. you know? Yeah. Like, I remember I had this friend group of kind of popular girls because we all played sports together. So I grew up playing sports, and I was a tomboy, and I was really goofy, and it was fun. Like, I had this friend group, and then something happened where, oh, I don't know, I was young, I didn't explore things I couldn't, but I just knew that my friends were changing in a way that I wasn't. Like, they were all starting to like boys, and I wasn't, and they were wearing makeup, and I wasn't, and they had this type of femininity that I felt like I didn't have access to in myself, and nothing was ever verbalized, nothing. I think I just kind of started to collapse and like run away from that difference, being so different. And I didn't go to high school, like normal high school. There was an option, a very new option, where instead of going to high school from middle school, you could do this like program that was very isolated and small. It meant that I would have to give up sports, all extracurriculars, and just do school. It attracted both very ambitious students, but for the most part, it attracted people like me who did not fit in anywhere and were really awkward and just felt like I'm not going to college. Like, you know, I was not doing well in school, I was making horrible grades or whatever, and I felt so different. I was kind of emo. I got really emo, and I signed up for it, and I just broke off from all of my friends, all of them, and didn't talk to them, and I just drifted away. It was really interesting, and I didn't reflect much on it until I grew up a little bit, and there are two moments that stick out to me. Like, one time I was watching a softball game, and I was kind of waiting on the fence, and one of the girls from my old friend group recognized me, and she came up to me, and I felt super like, whoa, you know, I was kind of in the late stages of my emo-ness, and anyway, she just said something to the effect of like, oh my gosh, you know, we missed you so much, like, what have you been doing? And I hope you're well, like, I really hope you're well. And that was it, and then she left. Another memory is I actually went to the normal high school for something. I don't remember why. I had to go to like the normal high school, and I was walking through the hallway when some classes let out, and another girl I used to be friends with was in the hallway, and she saw me, and she was like, Alex, oh my god, where are you? Like, what happened to you? Where did you go? And she said something. She's like, you were so funny. She was like, I remember, and she started listing things from like sleepovers that we'd done, and just that she remembered me and how funny I was. And that really shocked me because I was in this weird mode. I was so internal. I was so like in my feelings, and yeah, I was super into emo stuff and H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, you know how it is when you just. I really think in an alternate universe, if I had reflected and maybe been in a culture that had given more language at the time and more space. Of course, this is like pre-TikTok, this is pre all of that. I think I could have kept my friends and have been gay and have been into, you know, weird literature, and you know, I wasn't like a girly girl, I was a tomboy. And I think they would have accepted me. But as I sensed all of that come up to the surface of my personality, instead of like processing that, I felt a deep shame and an embarrassment, and so I left my friend group and I stopped talking to them. You know, these like quiet, more conventional feminine girls who were just having a good time and like boys in makeup, and we got on. I really liked them. I used to think I like grew apart, or I just grew in a different direction, but I don't think that's the case. I think what I did, because I saw these photographs in a museum of like exile, the book of the photographs is called Exile. I think I self-exiled, and I think that is literally a more accurate term for what I did to myself, as opposed to, oh, I grew in a different direction, or I didn't fit in, or my culture didn't allow me to fit in, etc., etc. I think I self-exiled because in exile, to self-exile is to set up a dynamic in which you feel the shame and the not belonging of like the lesser identity. And there's the popular identity, there's the thing that we believe is the right way to do something. And when you don't meet that standard, you can self-exile of your own. You just choose to go because of the shame and the embarrassment. Even if no one's forcing you out, even if people are saying, hey, don't go anywhere, don't leave, and they're just friendly to you. Sometimes people like myself, you still self-exile anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think, like we all kind of do it. Sometimes people do it in dating, where they're just like, instead of being practicing vulnerability, they'll just shut things down. They just shut it down. They exile themselves. Yeah. I'm stealing your bed, by the way, because it's very comfy. I'm stealing your bed. I'm gonna try not to take a nap today, but it's so comfortable. Anyway, yeah. I was saying about exile. You know who does it? I'll say, everyone does it, I think, to a degree. Adolescents, a lot, but also older adults do it a lot. Like a lot. I meet a lot of people who pretty much, they feel like left behind by society. They feel left behind, and they just shut off possibility. Like, they get older and they're like, well, I don't do that anymore. That's like a young people thing to go dancing or something like that, where older adults will start to exile themselves from society of their own accord because of a deep sense of shame that they're not attractive anymore or athletic enough anymore. And it's so sad to watch these mechanisms kick in, and then to watch people sit out on life, kind of put a pause and just opt out of life. I see that a lot, and I see people really exile themselves in relationships. You ever have a friend who gets in a relationship and they're just gone? They're gone. That's different. Maybe that's just like removal. But I do think sometimes it can have an exile quality, where, especially if it's a healthy relationship, people will feel that sense that they don't have approval, and so they dip, and they kind of isolate. It's quite interesting, actually. In the macro sense, it's the state, and it's the identity of the state and the values of the state. And if you're a threat to that, you get booted. And some people choose to run away. They choose to go into hiding, and etc. On a small scale, exile has a similar relational function. I don't know how to put that the best, because first thing in the morning I'm talking about that, but I think that an exile is a particular style of severing between what is valued institutionally and what manifests on an individual level. There is a severing, and you must go, and you become kind of lost, and you have to make something work in a new home, which may or may not work, and it has this kind of haunted quality. And I think that you can find that in all kinds of dynamics where it's the kind of common value, the absolute value, and the individual does not meet the value. And or even just a perceived, if an individual perceives that they don't meet the value, they might self-exile and banish themselves from any potential of having a more organic, fluid experience with the perceived mass, you know? I was thinking about that. That is a long way to talk about that. I dreamed about middle school, but I did dream about middle school, and I understand why, because that photography that I saw, that exhibit that I saw, made me kind of have a new language for some of my past behavior that was very shame-based. I kind of exiled myself from a lot of potential of how I dressed, how I looked, how I had relationships, my friends, my self-narrative, that kind of thing. Definitely that can also be connected to avoidance, I think, like how some people have avoidant personalities. Instead of facing something, they will run away. But I think that's a different concept than to exile yourself. That's a relationship. Avoidance is like a behavior, but to be in exile is like to exist in a state of that deep existential difference. You can run away from things and not have that difference. An exile relationship is different. You do not fit, or you perceive that you don't fit the kind of broader cultural absolute, a perceived or actual absolute. And sometimes that is a social group, and sometimes that is your country. Your entire country is putting a cultural absolute on you, and you don't fit, or you are a threat to it, and so you gotta go. So we understand that exiling is very, very ancient, historic, and usually comes from a lack of flexibility within a system, and kind of a hammer of ideology that comes down on people, individuals. So, yeah. Isn't that wild to talk about first thing in the morning? Not fitting in. Oh, yeah, I know. I would not want to go back to middle school either. Thank goodness that's over. Oh my god, in high school. Get that out of here. It is so much better to be free, I think, from all that stuff. Oh, this is unrelated, but I was going to show you something. I was going to show you this book, because okay, this is War Diaries by Jean-Paul Sartre. Notebooks from a Phony War, 1939 to 40. I saw this in a bookstore, and I was like, an antique bookstore. I had no idea he was stationed as part of the army. Can you believe that? Now this says, it says the young philosopher and novelist, so he was stationed on a meteorological unit. He used his considerable periods of spare time between mundane duties like watching weather balloons to make a series of notes on philosophy, literature, politics, history, and autobiography. So this dude, he was just in the middle, probably at a desk, bored out of his skull, looking at a bunch of balloons and he wrote stuff, and he kept a big diary, and I can read it. I haven't read this, but I was like, oh, I have to buy this. Are you kidding me? I had to get this because I understand the type of, like, the facets of your psychology that come out when you are stuck, trapped at a desk. You know what I mean? Like, when you're in a bad job and you're just stuck there all day. Like, I think some of the things that people probably write and draw secretly at work, if you saw them, you would be so concerned. But it's actually just a representation of, like, a trapped person who just hates being there. I used to work at a summer camp, and I would sit in the office, and, like, if I didn't have anything to do with the camp, like with the campers, I would sit in the office and I would draw these deranged looking faces, these creepy faces, and then I would write the time until I would fill sheets and sheets of paper with these faces and then the time. So I would write, like, it's 10:02:06, it's 10:02:10, 10:02:15, 10:02, 21, over and over and over and over and over again. Just because, I'm at a desk, and I was, like, just out of high school, gone to college, and I went home to, like, rural Texas to do the summer camp. But anyway, and here's the big book, Exiles. This thing is huge, and I bought it at the museum gift shop, and I couldn't put it in my bag, so I had to carry it on the train home. I looked very studious. I had to carry it like this. I love this thing. It's so good. I'll show you. This is one of my favorites. It's these kind of three guys. I can show you without the glare. But it's just super moody stuff. Like, here's the cover photograph. But just this kind of really stark, brutal street photography that shows, the kind of underbelly of life, the real humanity that we understand on an emotional level. And he's taken photographs over years and years and years while he's traveled around Europe. So the book is broken up and in sections, and then it shows you where things were taken. So it's pretty cool. I think he's maybe one of my favorite photographers. Yeah, if not my favorite. We should absolutely go to that museum at some point because it's very good. The Tate Modern is my favorite. I think I like old school art, but contemporary art makes me think a lot, which I like really, really think. And I like it less, and that is actually good. It makes me more irritated, and then that sparks a lot of thinking. So I think first we might need more coffee. Yeah, we might need a little bit more coffee. Maybe it's time for a latte. What do you think? I think a little black coffee to get the brain sharp in the morning, and then a nice latte. Maybe in the afternoon a little tea, maybe another coffee. We'll figure it out, but you can sleep in a little bit longer while I make coffee. So enjoy it, because I'm going to be up and ready for the day. So sleep tight for 10 more minutes, and I will make